you go. So welcome to this May webinar hosted by ODLAA. Some information about ODLAA is on the screen at the moment. Thank you for putting that up, Yang. One of the great attractions of ODLAA is its journal, and that journal is called Distance Education. And as a member of ODLAA, you get to access this journal. Many of the topics in our webinar series this year are presented by people who have been published in the journal in recent times, and that's today's webinar is no exception. I would like to introduce you to one of the authors of a really interesting article published in November last year, the November 21 issue. So welcome Wang from Nanjing Normal University in Nanjing in China. Your article and David Stein, no relation to me, but your article is called The Effects of Online Teaching Presence on Students' Cognitive Conflict and Engagement. Guiding students through their learning always brings with it challenges. That's what makes teaching such an interesting profession to be part of, I suppose. There's never a dull moment. The distance and online context provides a great prompt to educators to question assumptions that we may have about the way learning environments support students' learning. Garrison and Anderson's community of inquiry model has shifted our focus onto practices and structures within a course that generate and build a student's sense of presence, the cognitive presence, the teaching presence, and the social presence. These three presences work in an integrated way to result in the overall learning experience that the student has through the course of study that they work through. So today's presentation looks closely at one of those presences, the teaching presence, and it examines how teaching presence affects the way students engage cognitively and socially in their learning. So I'm going to hand over to Yang in a second to tell us about her study. During the presentation, I'm not the boss. Wang is the boss, and she will guide us through the presentation. But please feel free to add any questions in the chat, and we will make sure that we look at those at whatever point we need to before the end of the session. As you know, the session is being recorded, so I hope you're all okay with that. Okay, over to you, Wang. Welcome.
Okay, and thank you for Dr. Stein, the brief introduction of me and my study. And I'm very happy to be here to see Dr. Naidu for the first time. Yeah, I'm looking forward this day for a long time. Yeah, thank you so much for your time and help. So I will start my presentation now. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I'm very honored to be here to introduce my study in this year's. Thank you for the Open and Distance Learning Association of Australia for giving me this chance. So they are very kind and in arranging and hosting this event. Sarah Stein has been very helpful in keeping in close contact with me in these days. Yeah, before a brief introduction of my study, I would like to introduce Nanjing and Nanjing Normal University to all of you. As you can see, Nanjing is in the east of China, as marked in red in this map. And it is also one of the first national and historical cities. The ancient capital of 6 dynasties. It is also known as a city that respects literature and education since ancient times. Specifically, more than half of the top scholars in China in the Ming and Qing dynasties came from Jiangnan Gongyuan in Nanjing. So this is a picture of Jiangnan Gongyuan. And Qinghua River is also a very famous attraction in Nanjing near Jiangnan Gongyuan. It's very beautiful. So maybe one day you can come China and see the beautiful of Nanjing. Yeah. And Nanjing Normal University, this place I'm in, is known as the most beautiful campus in the east of China. So maybe when the COVID-19 is much better, I can invite you to Nanjing and see the beautiful city and beautiful campus. Yeah. So after a brief introduction of Nanjing and Nanjing Normal University, I will share my studies on online teaching and learning. So this is a brief introduction of my studies in recent 10 years, maybe. Yeah, since 2012, I have been interested in the theory and practice of online teaching and learning. Under the guidance of David Stein, I have gradually been exploring online teaching and learning in depth from a community of inquiry perspective. I aim to find theoretical and practical insights to facilitate students' online learning. So to make it easier to understand, I divide my presentation into 4 parts. And the part 1 is about the models and levels of teaching presence. And the second part is about the role of teaching presence. Third part is about the role of social presence. And the fourth part is the future research perspectives. So in the first part, we mainly focused on the teaching presence measurement methods and the level of students and teachers perceived the teaching presence. Let's go to the first part. And in this part, we have many publications too. Study 1 is about examining Chinese beginning online instructors teaching competencies. It is published in the Journal of Computer in Education. So this study constructed an instrument based on the activity theory as shown in this picture to investigate the beginning online instructors' online teaching competencies from the perspective of the online teaching process and applied it to beginning instructors to examine the validity. And 89 beginning online instructors from China participated in this study. And confirmatory factor analysis, descriptive statistics analysis, and regression are used in this study. So the results indicated that the activity theory fits the practice well and the instrument is reliable. Chinese beginning online instructors' competencies need to be improved, and especially in preparing themselves to teach online and conducting meaningful appraisals of students' learning. While beginning online instructors' gender and age has no significant influence on their online teaching competencies, and their educational level and online teaching and learning experience have significant effects on their competencies. Some instructors perceive that designing and organizing online teaching as well as evaluating students' performance are the biggest challenges to move traditional courses online. So it can give us some implications for online teaching practice. And based on the study 1, we conducted the study 2, the structure of Chinese beginning online instructors' competencies, evidence from the Bayesian factor analysis. So with the popularity of online education, understanding and improving the beginning online instructors' teaching presence is very crucial to improve online education. So the structure of beginning online instructors' competencies was explored in this study. It is followed the US theoretical framework that is, some studies discussed there is some difference between Chinese and US online teaching instructors, but how Chinese online instructors, especially beginning online instructors, perceiving the online teaching competencies and how this framework would differ from the US framework was less discussed. To fill in this gap, with this study explored the structure of Chinese beginning online instructors competencies using the Bayesian factor analysis. And the result found that the 3-factor solution is the most appropriate solution with the data, collected data. And the 3 factors are preparing and supporting online teaching, creating appropriate environment for students, and conducting appraisals of students' learning. So the contributions of this study are as follows. The first one is discussing the structure of Chinese beginning online instructors' perceived competencies. The second one is discussing why and how the structure of online teaching competencies varied across countries and different cultural backgrounds, and providing practical suggestions for online instructors' training programs. And it can also provide methodological guidelines in factor analysis with small sample size. So this is also a study published in the Journal of Computers in Education. The 2 studies mentioned above are about the structure of Chinese beginning online instructors' competencies based on the activity theory. After knowing more about the community of inquiry, we found that teaching presence can be used to measure instructors' online teaching presence, online teaching competencies. Hence, we explored the teaching presence measurement framework based on the community of inquiry. Then we conducted the study 3, the measurement framework of teaching presence. As shown in this picture, we conducted a teaching presence framework based on the community of inquiry with the following 5 indicators. And 408 questionnaires were collected from college students who had used online teaching. And atom analysis, exploratory factor analysis, and confirmatory factor analysis were used to analyze these results. And which it shows that the 5-factor framework is in good agreement with the data. And the confirmatory factor analysis also demonstrated a good model fit of the correlated 5-factor teaching presence framework. Therefore, the teaching presence measurement framework consisting of the design, analyzation, discourse facilitation, direct instruction, assessment, and technological support is in good, can serve as an effective tool to support teaching presence measurement and provide guidance for instructors' online teaching. And this is the structure of the teaching presence measurement framework constructed in this study, and it is published in the Frontiers in Psychology. So based on the teaching presence measurement framework, we conducted the study for students and teachers' perceived teaching presence in online courses. After a brief discussion with the students and teachers about the perceived teaching presence, it is found that they may have some different opinions on online teaching presence. So we just want to know what is the difference between students and teachers' perceived teaching presence. So differences in how students and teachers understand online teaching presence may play a key role in teaching design. So to explore how students and teachers perceive teaching presence, in this study, we surveyed 1,041 students and 18 teachers who participated in an online course at a Chinese university. The analysis found that students' perceived teaching presence was significantly lower than the teachers' perceived level, as shown in this picture. Yeah, this is the teachers' perceived teaching presence as outline. Yeah, and students' perceived teaching presence. So the students' perceived level is much lower than the teachers' perceived level. Regarding the perceived importance of the 5 dimensions of teaching presence, students perceived that the facilitating discourse was much more important than direct instruction. But for the teachers, direct instruction is much important for discourse facilitation. So this divergence creates a challenge for teachers in engaging students in learning. It means that the teachers could pay more attention to facilitating discourse to enhance students' online learning. So this is a very interesting study. I'm so thank you, distance education editor, Dr. Nadu, who gave me this chance to publish this study. And it gives me the confidence to continue my study on online education. Thank you so much. Yeah, Dr. Nadu. Yeah. So this is the first part of my study, where many focused on the teaching presence measurement frameworks and the level of students and teachers perceived the teaching presence level. But the role of teaching presence on students' learning is still to be explored. Hence, in the second part, where many focused on the role of teaching presence. And as you know, interactions and collaborative knowledge construction are essential indicators of students' learning. So we explore the role of online teaching presence in students' interactions and collaborative knowledge construction in study 5. So this is the interaction analysis of students in the 3 courses. This study analyzed the instructor's teaching presence of 3 courses conducted by an instructor to explore the effects of instructors' online teaching presence on students' interactions and collaborative knowledge constructions. Content analysis, social network analysis, and sequential analysis were used to explore the effects of teaching presence on students' interactions and collaborative knowledge construction. And the results demonstrate that the design and organization, as well as facilitating discourse, can facilitate students' interaction. Because we can see this picture, in course 3, the teaching presence level is much higher than the course 1 and 2. So the interactions is more dense compared with denser compared with the course 1 and 2. And this is the frequency of each cognitive level, and the course 3 is much higher than the course 1 and course 2. And this is the knowledge construction behavior transfer diagrams of the 3 courses. And the diagram in the course 3 is much obvious than the course 1 and 2. So there are some findings in this study. Direct instruction has positive effects on student centrality, and design and facilitating has positive effects on student sharing, discovery, and agreement. And direct instruction has negative effects on negotiation and testing. And this is a very interesting finding. As we can see, we see that we may think that teaching presence can enhance students' learning, but direct instruction as an indicator of teaching presence, it has a negative effect on students' negotiation and testing. So this is a very interesting finding in this study. And activity design is essential to students' learning. This is a study that published in the Journal of Computer Assisted Learning. And given that learning engagement is students' behavior, cognitive, and emotional input into learning activities, Skinner and Beaumont explained it as students' continuous behavior involvement accompanied by positive learning state in learning activities. So it determines the quality of online learning. Researchers support that teaching presence is a key factor influencing students' online learning engagement. Although they have attracted researchers' attention, teaching presence and learning engagement have often been analyzed as whole concepts. That is, the indicators of teaching presence on the 3-dimensional of learning engagement is to be further explored. Thus, we explore the effects of teaching presence on learning engagement in an online course. So this is a hypothesis model constructed in this study. Because teaching presence has potential to influence learning engagement, but the specific role of teaching presence in learning engagement is yet to be explored. Hence, I surveyed 1,328 college students in China through an online questionnaire. This equation modeling analysis result indicates that 5 dimensions of teaching presence, including the design and organization, facilitating discourse, direct instruction, assessment, and technological support, accounted for some part of behavior, cognitive, and emotional engagement. Specifically, design and organization demonstrated positive effects on cognitive and emotional engagement, and facilitating discourse significantly positive effects on emotional engagement, and direct instruction has positive effects on the emotional engagement. Assessment has significantly positive effects on behavior and cognitive engagement. Technological support demonstrated significantly positive effects on behavior, cognitive, and emotional engagement. And a very interesting finding is that the direct instruction in this study has a negative effect on behavior engagement. And this is consistent with the study conducted before. And it is a study published in the distance education. So there have different findings on the relationships among the teaching, social, and cognitive presences. All these studies support that they are closely correlated. However, the specific correlations of teaching presence, indicators, and social and cognitive presence need to be further explored. Hence, we further explore the relationships among the dimensions of teaching the community of inquiry in an online learning environment. And this is the research model and hypothesis. The community of inquiry indicates that meaningful learning occurs in the interaction among the teaching, social, and cognitive presences. Although studies have validated the close relationships among these 3 presences, the role of teaching presence indicators in student social and cognitive presence need to be further explored. Therefore, 592 Chinese college students were investigated through an online questionnaire, and the PLS-SEM was employed to analyze collected data. Results demonstrate that 3 indicators of the teaching presence can account for the social and cognitive presence. Specifically, design and organization, discourse facilitation has significantly positive correlation with social presence, while there was no significant correlation between direct instruction and social presence. Additionally, design and organization, discourse facilitation, and direct instruction had significantly positive correlations with cognitive presence. Results indicate that different indicators of teaching presence play different roles in students' social and cognitive presence. And this is a study will be published in the distance education. It has been accepted, yeah. And this is the topic of this presentation, yeah. Cognitive conflict, yeah. Cognitive conflict and learning engagement are essential indicators of cognitive development, and cognitive conflict is a very challenging stage that to be achieved in the cognitive development. So we want to explore if the teaching presence can influence students' learning and their knowledge construction. So what is the effects of teaching presence on students' cognitive conflict? So given this topic is a presentation topic, so we would introduce this study in detail from the following 6 perspectives: introduction, literature review, methods, results, discussion, and conclusions. So the background of this study is that with the spread of COVID-19, online education has gained much attention as a convenient method of learning and teaching for students, institutions globally. Although research has recognized that the essential role of teaching presence in students' learning, there's no consensus on the specific effects. So this study will explore the effects of online teaching presence on students' cognitive conflict and learning engagement by analyzing 3 rounds of course delivered by different levels of teaching presence. So this is a literature review. As an essential teaching element of the community of inquiry, teaching presence involves design and instruction to promote students' cognitive and social presence. Teaching presence as a process, it starts before the course is delivered. According to Anderson, teaching presence comprise 3 key aspects: design and organization, discourse facilitation, and direct instruction. Studies on teaching presence have highlighted its importance in students' learning. And cognitive conflicts. Conflicts between cognitive systems do not always negatively affect students' learning. In contrast, the conflicting knowledge construction can promote further elaboration and reflection, which promotes students' cognitive development. Conflict resolution is also a critical stage of cognitive development. There are many ways to facilitate conflict resolution, such as teacher presence, peer-to-peer social interaction, opinion sharing and discussion, and so on. Learning engagement, as it has been discussed in the previous studies, it is an essential indicator of positive learning outcomes for students. So it comprises students' internal thinking process, including observation, exploration, understanding, reflection, and external behaviors in the whole learning process. Therefore, improving students' online learning engagement is very essential. As for the relationships among teaching presence, cognitive conflict, and learning engagement that has attracted a lot of researchers' attention. The absence of teaching presence, on the other hand, may inhibit students' cognitive development. But there is a lack of consensus on the role of teaching presence in students' learning engagement. But the specific effects of teaching presence on student learning engagement require further exploration. So the research questions of this study, including the following 3 ones. The first one is, what effects of teaching presence indicators on students' cognitive conflicts? And second one is, what effects of teaching presence indicators on students' learning engagement? And third one is, how do teaching presence, cognitive conflict, and learning engagement interrelate? This is the research context. It is a course conducted for 3 rounds. In the round 1, there are 47 students. It is conducted in spring of 2017. In round 2, it comprises 43 students. It is conducted in 2018, and the small one is 2019. And this is a course consists of 12 modules, conducted by an instructor with more than 11 years online teaching experience. And the participants were graduate students from a large university in China who were aged from 24 to 29 and majoring in educational technology. This is the student demographics in the 3 rounds. And the data resources, including the syllabus, transcripts, activity guidelines, posts, self-reports, and interviews for the first midterm and final modules in each round were collected. And the discussion topics of the 3 modules are shown in the table 2. And the topic of the first module is know more about e-learning. The midterm module is to construct an effective online course. And the final module is the future of e-learning. And teaching presence students' cognitive conflicts were analyzed using the content analysis. Students' learning engagement were investigated with a questionnaire. And this is the coding scheme of the teaching presence adapted from SHARE 2006. And this is the coding scheme of the cognitive conflict. It is adapted from Lee 2003. It consists of the recognition of conflict, interest, anxiety, and the cognitive reassessment. And this is the cognitive conflict responses scheme. It adapted from Kang 2004. There are many types of responses to cognitive conflict, and this is the definitions and examples for it. Learning engagement was adapted from the ODLAA, and it is collected from the questionnaire, online questionnaire. This is a link. So this is a result of the frequency of teaching presence indicators of the 3 rounds. And the design organization in round 1 was the lowest. Design organization, grade 1, yeah, is the lowest compared with round 2 and round 3. And the design organization of round 2 and round 3 is much higher than the round 1. In addition, the design analyzation in round 2 and 3 decreased with the time over time. There were few instances of discourse facilitation in round 1. Discourse facilitation in round 1, there's few, but it's much more in the round 3. And the number of direct instruction in round 3 is the lowest, but the direct instruction in the round 1 is the highest. This is the teaching presence to cognitive conflict patterns in the 3 rounds. And we can see that the 3 teaching presence to cognitive conflict patterns, is that design organization to conflict, discourse facilitation to cognitive conflict, and direct instruction to cognitive conflict. As shown in figure 2, the number of teaching presence to cognitive conflict patterns in round 3 was much greater than in round 1 and 2. More important, most cognitive conflicts arose from discourse facilitation. Some cognitive conflicts arose from design and organization. Only a few cognitive conflicts emerged from direct instruction. And this is the cognitive conflict response patterns in the 3 rounds. And the content analysis revealed that 7 cognitive conflict response patterns in the 3 rounds of delivery. Cognitive conflict to rejection, to reinterpretation, to exclusion, uncertainty, and peripheral belief change and belief decrease, as well as belief change. And second finding is that the number of cognitive conflicts in round 2 and 3 is much greater than the rounds 1 and 2. So the cognitive conflict resolution or responses is much higher. Most cognitive conflicts are followed by a peripheral belief change. Most students followed the cognitive conflicts with a peripheral belief change. Several cognitive conflicts were followed by uncertainty and rejection. There are some findings on the effects of teaching presence on students' cognitive conflicts. The different levels of teaching presence may lead to differences in students' cognitive conflicts. The result of cognitive conflict response pattern in the 3 rounds indicates that discourse facilitation could lead to cognitive conflicts. That is, discourse facilitating may be helpful to improve students' cognitive development. And third one is that there was no significant difference in the responses to cognitive conflicts among the 3 rounds of online course in this study. And this result indicates that teaching presence demonstrated no significant effects on students' responses to cognitive conflicts, which suggests that students cannot always achieve cognitive change or cognitive development when confronted with conflict conditions. So there are some findings in this study. Design and organization has positive effects on students' behavior engagement. As for the engagement, discourse facilitation has positive effects on students' cognitive conflict and further influence their cognitive development. Direct instruction has positive effects on students' emotional engagement. So the students' cognitive conflict and learning engagement depend on the teacher's design and organization and discourse facilitation. Moreover, excessive direct instruction may negatively influence students' reflection and learning interaction. And this is also finding which consistent with the studies we conducted before. Okay. This is part 2. In part 2, we mainly focused on the role of teaching presence in students' learning. But social support is also a very essential element in the community of inquiry. So in part 3, we would like to further explore the role of social support in online learning environments. Specifically, we mainly focused on the role of teachers' facial expressions in students' learning. Because when there are many video lectures online this year, maybe, it is a very popular learning method. So we want to know if the teacher's facial expressions has effects on students' learning in video lectures. So this study investigated whether video lectures instructed by a heightened level of expressiveness instructor were better than those instructed by a conventional level of expressiveness instructor or audio only in promoting students' online learning? And what kind of effects do instructors' facial expressions have on students' learning? 3 different types of video lectures, one with a heightened level of facial expressions, one with a conventional level of expressiveness instructor, and one with the teacher's audio only, were used to study the effects of teachers' facial expressions in students' learning. 69 participants from Chinese Normal University were selected to learn with these video lectures. Results of this study indicated that video lectures with a heightened level of facial expressions were better than those with a conventional level of expressiveness instructor and audio-only ones with regard to improving students' arousal level and learning satisfaction. So instructors' facial expression has no significant influence on students' short-term recall, but their facial expressions did influence students' mid-term recall. Instructors' facial expressions play a key role in students' online learning. So this paper found that video lectures with an expressive instructor were superior to those with an inexpressive instructor and no human ones with regard to improve student arousal level and learning satisfaction. And instructors' facial expressions had no significant influence on students' short-term recall, but they did influence on student mid-term recall. So the implications of this study was that it would be better for video lecture developers to put the instructor's figure in front of this nice video. And instructors could be expressive in facial part during the recording of video lectures to improve students' learning satisfaction, arousal level, and learning performance. And this is a study published in the British Journal of Educational Technology. So in part 3, there is still much to be explored in terms of the role of social support and the association between emotional presence and social presence, the measurement methods of these elements and its impact on students' learning and so on. So in part 4, we would like to discuss a future research perspective. So in the future, we may explore more new elements in the community of inquiry, such as learning presence, emotional presence, and so on. And automatic analysis methods for these elements may be helpful, and data fusion analysis methods in a blended learning environment, how we collect the data and analyze this data in a blended learning environment, and multimodal data analysis, including the facial expression, gestures, and teaching presence, maybe other indicators in the online learning environment. So all mentioned above are series of studies related to online teaching and learning. This year's we conducted. So we welcome your valuable suggestions. Thank you for your time. That's all of my presentation.
All right. Many thanks, Wang.
That's okay, yeah.
There have been a few comments come through in the chat. Shall we stop sharing the screen? Unless you want to show something, but shall we stop sharing the screen and then we can see everybody's faces?
Okay.
That might help with that last study about facial expression. Okay. is important, I guess, for engagement. Thank you for that. I am fascinated by the degree of investigation into the small bits that make up something that is quite a holistic thing when we think about a student's learning experience. And you have taken a model, a community of inquiry model, and really looked deeply in parts of it and exploring the connections between the different aspects. I think that's fantastic. It helps us, well, from my perspective, get a handle on ways of describing what we do, ways of helping teachers to understand what's going on in the new environment that they may be engaging in when they have to teach online. Let's see what some of the other people in the group have been commenting on. We'll look at the chat, shall we?
Yeah.
back early on, some said that students will always want more, which is my experience as well. They want more and more and more. And teachers often want to give less and less and less. But getting the mixture is right. What do you think about that? Do you think that's a fair comment? Getting the mixture between student demands and teacher demands and needs?
Yeah, thank you for this question. It's a very good question. Yeah. Yeah. The students' perceived teaching level, teaching presence level is much lower than the teachers' perceived level, and that's because students want more and teachers want less because there are a lot of workload for them. Yeah. But most important part in that study is that teachers perceive the direct instruction is much important than discourse facilitation. But for students, discourse facilitation is much important than direct instruction. So though they may perceive a different level of teaching presence, they perceive the importance of the indicators of teaching presence has also some difference. So this is the point that the teachers should focus on. Yeah. So it means that teacher can do more to facilitate students' discourse, and with some help with the associate teacher or some other students to help them facilitate students' discussion during the online discussion or online learning. Yeah. So thank you for this question.
You were going to say something.
Thanks, Sarah. I just wanted to follow up on that, Wang. First of all, I wanted to congratulate you. I've been corresponding with you for a long time, but seeing the whole body of work that you've been doing over the last 3-4 years is amazing. So well done, and I look forward to seeing more of your work. I mean, it's very exciting, and I admire the thorough of your studies. But one of the things that I was bothered by when not just as a result of your work, but as a result of the work around the community inquiry model, is that all of this could apply to the campus-based experience as well, isn't it? So I'm wondering, what is the difference here? You do talk about your students being from, or your respondents being from the online learning environment, but if you say use a different set of students from a traditional campus-based face-to-face educational setting, would the findings be the same or the findings be different? How would, say, campus-based students, react to direct instruction or discourse facilitation and those sorts of things? So I'm not looking for a direct answer to this, but I'm just looking for a commentary or your perception about what are the question really is this, what are the threats to open, flexible online distance education? If all of you, I'll say this again, if what you present from the point of view of the consequences of direct instruction and discourse facilitation and so on as part of the community inquiry is true, then what are the threats for these sorts of transactions in the online environment? Where does it fall apart? Where is the weakness? Where is the weak point in the online learning environment?
Yeah. It's a very good question. Yeah, thank you for Dr. Nadu. Yeah, I have interviewed some of the students about their feelings about online teaching and learning, because in China, we are still conducted our classes online maybe this semester, whole semester for the COVID-19. Yeah, students don't like online learning. I just ask them. And they say, I don't like online, I want to face-to-face. Yeah. So I ask them, oh, what's the points? So do you think what's the difference between online and the face-to-face? They say that because online I just want to distract it for another thing. Yeah, one too many, one teacher and many students, so they will distract easily. But in face-to-face, they were not easy to distract it, because if they distract, we can focus them, yeah, easily. And some students just say that they can feel the teachers more easily in the face-to-face environment, but in the online, it's not so good. So, but I think it's a very good point to explore if these findings in our studies could be transferred to face-to-face learning. Yeah, I think some of them may be useful in the face-to-face learning environment, but it could be a good direction for the future studies. Yeah.
I often think that the expectations and the assumptions of students who come to the course play a big part in the behaviors that they show or demonstrate and the things that they think are important and not. So in the situation of COVID-19, when the students you're talking about have to be online, because they have to, because there's no other way to do it, they have in their mind, but we want a face-to-face, because presumably that's what they enrolled in. They enrolled in a face-to-face course and thought they would have face-to-face. So they're coming with that expectation, and everything else is not as good. So, you know, it's not going to be as good, not the same. But what about the students who come to the course that's been deliberately designed for flexible interaction, online interaction, distance, or whatever you want to call it? The expectations will be different, I think, maybe. And the teachers' expectations and assumptions would be too, would they? I don't know, that's just a thought. And maybe then exploring the face-to-face that Som suggested, where the expectations are that this will be a face-to-face course. It is face-to-face, and using your techniques to investigate that, and then investigating the course that is online because it's supposed to be online and it was designed for online, and then comparing the two. I wonder if that's something, I don't know, Som?
Well, if nobody has any comments, then I'll go. But
no, excuse me, we can't have two people dominating. That's not fair. So come in. Thank you, Som. Yeah, thank you. I can also see Mitch has got a question, and it's only it's about 10 minutes left. So
well, I won't need 10 minutes. I could take 10 minutes. Look, Yang, thank you. I've got a folder that I call readings, and that's where I throw all my interesting articles. And I've got a folder in my readings folder called Community of Inquiry, and a lot of your articles are in there. So I just want to thank you for your contribution to the field, because you make very, very interesting reading, particularly around the community of inquiry model. I suppose where I'm coming from, I come from an institution where 85%, before the pandemic, 85% of our students were online. So we have a very strong online presence. So, I mean, what I find, I think the point made, the students always want more and we want to give less. I think it becomes a matter, particularly online, it becomes a matter of strategy in terms of where and how you provide that teaching presence. Because the teaching presence, things like, you know, planning an organisation, that tends to happen in the background. You know, that happens, you know, well, I mean, typically. And then you've got the direct instruction and sort of discourse facilitation is more where you might need to be there. So, and also things around, we focus quite heavily, particularly in an online environment. I'm very keen in terms of social presence, because students report the online is very isolating, we don't feel connected. So I find that if we had strong teaching presence and strong social presence at particular points of the course, you know, we at the very start of the course, we are very, very, well, we're always friendly. Gosh, we're friendly people, aren't we? We're always in there talking about, you know, building the social presence, building the rapport with the students, building the teaching presence, and then having those at different points. So we don't have to have the sort of the full spectrum of teaching presence all across the course. We are there at key points. And the perception students is, I mean, we get good reports around students feel connected. They feel like we've got a good presence by being strategic about when we might do that. And it's also, I think, too, around the teaching presence in terms of things like assessment and feedback. I think too, if you're giving good assessment, meaningful assessment, and you're giving good feedback, students then they seem to be a lot happier in terms of, well, you know, I felt the lecturer was really present for me and understood what I wanted to do, and I got a strong sense of where the course was going by providing at strategic position. I'm just thinking, does that resonate with you? Does that sort of suggest? I mean, that's my sort of impression. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I just also add to that, Mitchell, is that I think that you've hit the nail on the head there, because I'm seeing a lot of the literature coming out around COVID, in that with the emergency remote teaching, that people have tried very hard to do social presence and teacher presence, but there's also now teacher wellbeing issues about the sustainability of that constant social and teacher presence throughout a course. So I think the idea of a strategic approach to it is a great idea.
Yeah, and I think even in face-to-face scenarios, we're not continually on all the time. Even in a tutorial, I might be having, you know, making sure my presence is felt at strategic points in the lesson where I feel that needs to be going, you know, where you grab the teachable moment. But a lot of time as students, it's really about that presence being there. And just the other thing I want to quickly think about too, the online face-to-face is better thing. You know, probably 85% of our students come to our university because they can't come face to face. We're northern New South Wales of Australia, so we deal with a lot of rural remote students who can't necessarily come to a city, can't come to face. So for some students, it's not whether or not it's the best option. For many students, it's the only option. I think what happens is, where I'm a great believer in online learning and distance education, where it falls down is when we try to replicate what we do in an online learning scenario, when we try to replicate what we do face-to-face. So we're finding, you know, I think that one of the things too, I mean, the big distinction from one of the big distinctions is the synchronicity. Face-to-face, you're in a lecture theatre at 9 o'clock and I'm talking to you for an hour. You know, but contrasting that with the flexibility of being able to engage with the lecturer or engage with the content and the ideas at any time that suits. I'm finding increasingly, as an online institution, we're actually trying to sort of make life more synchronous, as it were. So if we're expecting students to say, well, if there's going to be a live stream lecture at 9 o'clock, I'd like you to be there. And the students go, well, I can't be there. That's why I'm not there in a face-to-face scenario. So I think we need to make sure that we don't try and copy, and in an online learning environment, distance education environment, don't try and copy the face-to-face, because it will not necessarily be superior. Play to distance and online learning's education strength. And I think it's about the flexibility. It's an opportunity, the asynchronous stuff, opportunities for students to sit, reflect, have a little bit of a time when they receive information from when they respond, and the whole, so I think it's we shouldn't try to play each other off, because for particularly our students, they have no other choice.
Thank you, Mitch. And just my contribution to this is, one, I'd like to thank Wang for for that presentation. I was very impressed with all the statistics that you have offered. But I would also like to add one other line there and say that in the midst of all that statistics, we will still require an occasional, every month's language to explain some of that statistics. It did give me the impression that there's always that dichotomy between the teaching presence or the teaching absence. Or, it is always an option of, is there a teaching presence or is there a teaching absence? And you might want to just investigate a way of explaining that. And like Mitch says, there are asynchronous and synchronous mode of learning. There should be a meeting point that we should get from all this. I was also going to ask one other question on some of the terminology. I put in the chat there about study 5 where we talk about sharing, discovery, and agreement. And I was just wondering what you meant by agreement, because agreement come over 2 or 3 times in your presentation. What are we agreeing on? Is it a conflict, or what was that about?
So, yeah, there are 2 questions. The first one is about the sharing, discovery. Yep. Yeah, an agreement. What does the agreement stand for? Okay, I want to maybe share my slides. Is much yeah, helpful. Okay. Agreement is a state that students negotiate after they have disagreements between each other, and they discuss it and negotiate and set this problem with agreement. That's agreement means, yeah. And the second is about what about engagement? Yes. What does it mean? Is that right? Yeah. So engagement means behavior, cognitive, and emotional input of students in the online learning. So it is a very essential indicator of students' online learning performance. So that's why we focused on this indicator so often. Yeah, that's my answer. I hope it answers your question. Yeah.
And so the 2 are quite connected, aren't they? Because the engagement is what is happening when sharing, discovering, and agreement is going on, because there's people are engaged, they're discussing, they're challenging and questioning and wrestling with ideas, and then coming to a shared understanding about a concept or an idea, which is, I guess, cognitive conflict at play as well. All of those things. Well, we're about 2 minutes away from the finish here.
Maybe give some a minute, because he had something burning.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mutwata. I mean, but again, thank you, Yang Wang, and then I'll talk to you about other things later. But I want to leave you all actually with one thought that I'm grappling with right now. We all know how we have been sort of thrust, towards more and more open, flexible, distance, and online learning because of COVID-19. I think we need to hold a breath a little bit and step back and think about what is really happening and what is happening to the broader field of open, flexible, distance, and online learning. Those are not the same things. I mean, we haven't talked a lot about the idea of openness. What does it mean? And Michael talked a bit about flexibility. We haven't talked about that. Online learning has got affordances. It's just not about taking things online. It's a different kind of a learning and teaching transaction. And some of the tools by way of questionnaires that we use don't really capture that. So while institutions move towards more and more open, flexible, distance, and online learning, where are the pressure points? Where are the threats to the core fundamental principles of openness and flexibility? Because these are the value principles that this mode of education was built upon, isn't it? And are we thinking about those value principles while we move towards more and more open, flexible, distance, and online learning, or not? Or are we forgetting and dumping those value principles and simply just getting onto the new mode of transportation? So I'm concerned about those value principles, and how are those value principles captured by our move and adoption, move towards an adoption of online, flexible, and distance learning. Thank you very much. You got to leave that thought.
a very good thought to leave us with, Son. Thank you. Yeah, it's when you caught up with the mechanics of how to teach online or whatever, it's very easy to forget about why you're doing it in the first place. Okay, I need to round it up. The recording of this will be added to our YouTube site, and there's the link for anybody who wants to see it. That should be up there in a couple of days. I just want to say a big thank you to you, Wang, for presenting this for us today, and introducing to us the the wide-ranging research projects that you've been involved in, and that's really fascinating. And it's given me, I know, lots to follow upon. Thank you very much. I also encourage people here to go to the ODLAA website to look for information about upcoming webinars. They tend to be once a month towards the last Thursday. And so there'll be a last Thursday of each month. So there'll be another one on in June. Thank you once again to our presenter, and of course to everybody who came along today. So we'll sign off for now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.